The top tier bows in RuneScape are much more powerful than ever with the latest updates. If you were wondering by chance which of these bows would actually be the easiest to grind out, or what number of kills you're realistically looking at when grinding out any of these, keep watching, because I have built some simulators that do this 10,000 times per bow, kind of so you don't have to. Good day, everybody. Today I'm talking about the tier 90 Noxious Longbow, the tier 92 Seren Godbow, and of course the tier 95 Bow of the Last Guardian. Making each of these bows requires several rare components dropped by the high-level bosses Araxxi, Telos, and Zamorak respectively. As I play exclusively on an Iron account now, trying to break into a high-level range setup, because I've been carrying around a plowing tier 87 blowpipe for almost a year. Anyway, and because I'm somewhat of an experienced software engineer, I decided I want to create a program that simulates what these grinds actually look like before I start any of them. This video is actually a follow-up to my prior video, which I published once I finished my Noxious Bow simulator. You can find the link on screen now and in the description if you're interested in that specifically, but here I'm going to run you through simulations killing Telos and Zamorak as well at various enrages and compare what all three of these grinds look like. Very briefly before we jump straight in, let me explain the way that each of these simulators works. They work by simulating 10,000 players grinding the respective boss for the respective bow, tally up the kill count, and stop counting only when all the components for that target bow have been dropped for that simulated player 10,000 times. So for the Telos bow simulator, for example, the simulator will keep running kills on Telos for each player, keep track of rare drops, and stop once the dormant Seren Godbow and the 3 orbs required have been dropped. But what's the point of building entire simulators like this, you might ask? If we already know the drop rate of Araxxi's web is 1 in 240 if you're meleeing, and the leg drop rates are always 1 in 40. You'll find out very quickly that a 1 in 240 drop rate does not mean you're completing a Nox bow at 240 kills. We all either are or know players who have completed a Nox weapon in just 50 kills, and also know players who took over 600 kills to get their first Fang, or even their first leg piece in unlucky cases. The drop rates alone don't mean much in the harsh world of RNG. What I'm going to show you with these simulators is a way more valuable than that, because I can show you that when 10,000 players grind for a bow, 50% of them have it complete by this number of kills. Or if you get up to 300 kills for a particular boss, here's the percent likelihood that you'll have the drops required to complete the weapon. Make sense? If not, that's okay. It's a lot, and the best way to show you all this is by example. Since I already have a video on this for Araxxi, I'll save that one for last and go in reverse order of tiers. So let's start with the big T95 Bow of the Last Guardian and simulate some Zamorak kills.
Okay, so this is the interface I made for all my simulators. It looks pretty much the same. I'll note that design is not my strong suit when it comes to programming, so I hope it makes sense. But anyways, that's a different conversation. So here's how it all works. I made 2 buttons per simulator. The same for each one. The first one that is the most important to us is this button that simulates 10,000 players grinding this boss until the bow is complete. So in this case, I hit this button, and it simulates 10,000 players killing Zamorak until all of them have completed a Bow of the Last Guardian by getting all 3 drop parts needed for that. Right off the bat, if you can understand these numbers already, you might be alarmed, but don't be. This is actually normal mode by default when I pop it open, so this is kind of expected. But if you are confused by this, here's how to read everything. So what this shows is on the y-axis here, the number of players that completed a bow, and on the x-axis the number of kills it took them to complete it. So that's nice, but to help us read this information a little bit better, I have this section here. So percentage of simulations with bow complete at total kills means, here's how you read this. The players that got that stretched out to 2,000 to 299 kills, so somewhere in that range, of those players that got the bow complete in this kill range, they make up about 42.65% of the total simulated players. Another way to say that is that about 69% of players completed the bow within the 3,000 to 3,099 kills range. and about 86% of them had to complete by 4,000 to 4,100 kills, and so on. So that's how you read this graph here. The other button I made just simulates one player at a time grinding until the bow is complete. This isn't as useful for us, but I just kind of made it for fun, because when you simulate one player at a time, it's easier to show a bit of other information per boss, and this is tailored per boss. What I was really curious to see here is just how many total signature drops each simulated player gets as I keep hitting this button. So we know that, what's interesting here, I guess I should say, is that we know that the bow pieces drop in order when you fight Zamorak, so there's no repeats. That's great news. And you need 3 bow pieces to complete the Bow of the Last Guardian. What I wanted to see is what the grind looks like as far as other drops are concerned when you complete a bow, and we already know that at pretty much any enrage, the bow pieces are some of the most rare signature drops that you can get. So we can see that if you are grinding for a complete bow, you will definitely, statistically speaking, see a lot of other rare drops before you complete the bow, like plenty of vestment pieces and more codexes than you know what to do with. Now, the Zamorak calculator here specifically has a few features that the others don't, because there are a few mechanics that are special to Zamorak. So, first of all, I built in these buttons. Like I said, when I pop this open, it defaults to normal mode or 0% enrage, but I have options for 100% enrage and 500% enrage, at which you can fight Zamorak. So, we can see that the numbers already change quite a lot when I pop it open to 100 enrage and simulate 10,000 players there, and then even more so when I simulate 10,000 complete bows at 500%, like that. Now, the reason there is such a stark difference, well, one of the reasons there is such a stark difference between normal mode and 100 or 500% bow completion rates is that aside from the better drop rates, Zamorak has a unique mechanic called bad luck mitigation that kicks in only at 100% enrage or higher. If you're not already familiar, the way it works is basically that when you go 10 kills dry without a signature drop, so one of these, bad luck mitigation starts to kick in, and the chance every time you kill Zamorak after those 10 dry kills, your chance of hitting the signature drop table increases slightly up until a certain like maximum chance. So at 100% enrage and 500% enrage, the highest possible chance you can hit of hitting the signature table if you go very dry is 1 in 20. Also FYI, at 100% enrage, your starting chance is 1 in 97 of hitting the signature table, and at 500 enrage, your chance is 1 in 80, the starting chance of hitting the signature table. So that's one of the reasons why a bunch of the kills are, well, bunched, that you can see here towards the beginning of the graph, rather compared to normal mode, where there's just a really crappy distribution of when players complete the bow, stretching all the way out to past 6,000 kills total. At 500% enrage, for example, we can see that 93% of players have completed the bow by about 1,000 kills. So that's, I guess, not awful. Now, the other thing I've added here that is also unique to Zamorak is this dungeon completed button. When you complete the entire dungeon before killing Zamorak, your chance of hitting the signature drop table increases further by about 25%, if I'm doing the math there, right? And so here's just a quick comparison. Here's 100% enrage, 10,000 players going for it. That's what the spread looks like. If they all completed the dungeon before each and every single kill, it looks like this. So we can see a little bit better. Likewise, comparing 500% enrage, here's what it looks like just killing Zamorak, and here's what it looks like if you've completed the dungeon before each and every kill. So substantial increase in rates of completing the bow, right? Now, most players, including myself, don't really find it worth it to complete the dungeon before each and every single boss kill, because you're looking at hundreds of boss kills anyways. I was just curious to see if it makes a substantial impact at any enrage that makes it worth doing that. I think probably not, unless you have a team that can clear that thing really fast and you're doing really high enrages that are kind of difficult and you can't complete reliably all the time, maybe. But I think most players will still prefer to just kill Zamorak multiple times in the time that it would normally take to complete the whole dungeon.
Next up, let's check out the Telos simulator and quickly grind out 10,000 Seren Godbows. By the way, if you're able to see me making a Zamorak run earlier and Telos here, you may quickly notice that I do not know how to fight these bosses properly whatsoever. I do not have any successful solo normal mode Zamorak kills yet, and playing in the background here is my first ever Telos attempt at 0 enrage. At least this one was successful. Now, this simulator confused me at first and alarmed me, to be honest with you. So what's different about this simulator is that I have set a start enrage and a kill streak for whatever we want to calculate, because Telos does work on the streak system. So what this allows me to do is that before I simulate either just one player completing bows or 10,000, I can set the start enrage that I want and how many the kill streak that I'm going to go for, so how many kills. And then just as a little guide, I have had it calculate the ending enrage here. So it calculates on the fly so that it gives me an idea of what kind of enrage I'm going to be dealing with, whether I start at 100 enrage or 1,000 or whatever. So you may notice that this graph is a little bumpy, and that makes it really weird to interpret. That is because the way this works, so yeah, when I hit this button, we started at 100 enrage and 40 kill streak, right? So we go for 40 kills starting at 100. We end at about 580 enrage. That's just assuming the average enrage increase rate. Anyways, the reason it's bumpy is because your luck for a rare drop increases with both the streak and the enrage. The highest chances with this setting here are on kill number 40, and after that we reset. So it simulates basically the player ending the kill streak, claiming rewards, whatever, and starting over at 100 enrage. So I have double and triple quality check this because it is bizarre, but that's my theory as to why this is bumpy. Now, there is a formula on the wiki for Telos drops that varies with enrage and streak, like I mentioned, and the highest, or sorry, the best possible chance you can get at a rare drop from Telos per kill is 1 in 15. If you surpass a certain enrage, your chance could actually be better, but the formula keeps it at roughly 1 in 15. So the way to get a 1 in 15 chance at Telos, by the way, the best chance of a rare drop, is to start at 400, and I believe it was 449 enrage. Let's just say 2,500 to be safe. It's somewhere in that ballpark. Now, if I simulate this, we see a drastic change in the number of kills by which people complete bows. So within like 100 to 120 kills, sorry, let's say, yeah, about 44% of the simulated players here completed the Seren Godbow by the time they hit 120 kills. That's what that means. 73% completed them by 200 kills. Now, that is a very difficult Telos because 2,500 enrage is no joke, and it keeps going if you kill streak. But at this point, because the drop rate is at the highest possible, even if the kill streak is 1, this doesn't change much. So we already know your best bet at getting rares from Telos is starting at around this enrage and then just claiming every kill. Now, you're not going to make a lot of good money on this. This is kind of a tangent now, but the common rewards and how much that's worth from Telos is based on more on streak than enrage, so you're going to make really crappy money if you do this. But this was a little bit alarming to me. I thought the Telos grind would actually be much easier, but because, you know, even if I start at like 1,000 in rage and I go for 50 kills, yeah, and I end at 1,600 roughly in rage, I see that if I go up to 220 kills, I have a roughly 50% chance that I'm going to have a complete bow. That's what these numbers really mean. So of 10,000 simulated players, half of them completed the bow by the time they got 200 kills. Following this, starting at 1,000 in rage, going for a kill streak of 50, and resetting. So that's what this grind looks like, guys. If you want to start a little bit lower, and by the way, before 100 in rage, Telos is, oops, sorry. Let's say 1 in rage. Before 100 in rage, Telos' drop rates for rares are absolutely horrible. You probably won't get anything. I think it drops either tenfold, yeah, something like that. So, at minimum, you want to start at 100 in rage Telos and streak for as high as you can without dying. And you notice that the rates are not bad. Let's say, yeah, I mean, I started at 100 in rage and I go for 100 kills. I end at about 1,300 in rage. Let's see, if I go out to 300 kills following this, so basically repeating this cycle 3 times, I've got a 57% shot at having a complete Godbow. So that's how to read this. And that's what the Telos grind looks like. Enough said. Lastly, let's see what grinding 10,000 Nox bows looks like. Since my last video on this, in this particular simulator, I have added some bonus features, namely these buttons that allow you to pick which add-on, the Web, Eye, or Fang, has the favorite drop rate. So Araxxi, in the first 3 phases, fights you with the combat style weak to whatever combat style you start the fight with. So if you use Mage, he'll use Melee. If you use Melee, he'll use Range. And the drop rate for the corresponding add-on is the highest at 1 in 240. And the drop rate for the other 2 add-ons will be 1 in 480. So for example, if you're going for a web like here, you want to be meleeing Araxxi because that will make the drop rate for the web 1 in 240. And the drop rates for the leg parts are always 1 in 40. It's just each leg is dropped on the path that corresponds to it, top, middle, or bottom. The way this simulator runs kills is that it starts each player on the top path of the encounter and grinds until the top leg piece is dropped. Then the simulated player grinds the middle path until the middle leg piece is dropped, and then finally grinds the bottom path until the final leg piece is dropped. If the simulated player has not received an Araxxi's web yet, the grind keeps going until it is dropped. This particular simulator is a little bit cringy for me, especially as I run the single, simulating one player completing a bow button. The range of kills it can possibly take is absolutely crazy to me. And the way to read this is that it took this player 55 kills only. They grinded the top path for an entire 31 kills for the top spider leg, and then just 6 kills for the middle, and then 18 for the bottom one. And then at some point within there, they got the 1 web. So there's that. Now, there aren't... because, well, I'll say this. Araxxi does have an enrage mechanic, but it doesn't affect any of these drops. It really just affects the pet drops and pheromone drops, I think. Jeez, I just noticed this simulation took over 1,000 kills, which is literally in the, 0.1%. Anyways, that's terrible. 17 bottoms before, and 3 fangs, and 1 eye before 1 web. We all know that player, right? 893 kills in the bottom path. Anyways, that was a tangent. This simulator was the easiest to make because, yeah, there's no enrage that affects any of these drops, so I can run this over and over. That simulates 10,000 players doing it, and it's very similar. We can see pretty flatly that if you go for about 200 to 220 Araxxi kills, you've got a 50-50 shot that you'll have the bow complete. And this assumes that you're using melee for the, improved web drop rate. So that's what that looks like. If you stretch out to 300 kills, there's a 70% chance, or you'll fall within the 70% of simulated players that also have an Oxbow complete, and then so on and so forth. Now, I built in these buttons to simulate the same thing, regardless of what I choose. Let's say I choose the Fang as the favorite drop rate item and run it again. The simulation only stops still when the bow is complete, so when the web has been dropped, and you can see that it's much crappier. The reason I made this really is because I run an iron account, like I mentioned, and I don't have any good, very good halberds yet. But I do have a Spear of Annihilation because I got fairly lucky with archaeology. But if you've ever tried meleeing Araxxi and Araxxi, you know that meleeing is particularly irritating. It just makes some of the prayer switching and a lot of mechanics a lot harder to deal with. So I kind of wanted to know what my chances are if I just mage it and animate dead to make it easy the whole time. Still going specifically for the Nox bow. And we can see that now, whereas before... So yeah, so 10,000 players going for it. About half of them have the bow complete by 200 kills, right? If they're meleeing Araxxi. But if I'm going to mage Araxxi and I kill it 200 times, I'm only about 30% likely to have the bow complete. And for it to be in the 50 percentile, I need to stretch out to 300 kills, so... My personal strategy would be meleeing it until it drops a web, maybe, fortunately, hopefully. And then if it does, just mage it or whatever's easier the rest of the way. That's what I would recommend to you as well. God, these numbers are wild. Anyways, that's all. That's how all the simulators work, and that's all the numbers. It's a lot to digest and a lot to put down in one video. By the way, I'll have a link to the Reddit discussion that I posted on this in the description as well. Because Reddit is a great place to discuss this kind of stuff, and it gets a lot of feedback, so that's excellent for more info on that. But For now, let's go into the more nerdy stuff and actually figure out how these grinds stack up and compare to each other. So how do we properly break this down and compare these grinds? One thing I want to start with is let's get a benchmark. So for Araxxi, we know that if I get about 200 kills, I'm 50% likely to have the bow complete, according to all this data, right? Let's see what the equivalents are like for Zamorak and Telos. So for Telos, what I need to do to go for about 200 kills and have about a 50% chance of having my Seren Godbow complete is, apparently from this, it looks like if I start at an enrage of 500 and I streak for 100 kills, I'll end at an enrage of 1700%. And if I go out to 200 kills, so basically I claim at 100, do it all over again, that's the equivalent. So the equivalent luck in kill numbers, if that makes any sense at all, comparing this to Araxxi, is Telos at 500 enrage, streaking for 100 kills. As irritating as Araxxi is, there is definitely a skill gap here I don't even know about. I've done Araxxi a bunch of times on my main and my iron for hundreds of kills, let's say. Telos I'm just learning, but I know that at higher enrages it gets very tricky, so it looks like, at least comparing in this range, Araxxi is a little bit preferable.
Now if we check Zamorak, we can see that the rough equivalent of where you need to be within the 50% of players completing the bow range is at 500% enrage, going for about 500 to 600 kills. A little bit steeper, actually a lot steeper than Telos or Araxxi grinding for the bow. So if I drop it down just out of curiosity to 100% enrage, because it's a little bit easier, you see that it's somewhere between probably like the 800 to 900 kill range. Now, because these numbers are a little bit wacky, the way to make this a little bit closer in terms of kill count needed would be to stretch the enrage out to about like 1000% or even 2000%. On the related Reddit post I have about this, that I'll link in the description, a few players asked for that. I didn't bother calculating in buttons for 1000 and 2000% enrage yet because I consider that that's out of reach of too many players, even at this point, to consider. But that being said, in the near future, I might put in buttons for those two out of curiosity because I'm just curious myself now. But actually these numbers are a little bit, not alarming, but surprising to me. I didn't expect it to take quite that many high enrage, by high enrage I mean 500% kills at Zamorak to just complete a bow. So looking at all this, I would conclude that if you're grinding your first complete high tier bow, either because you're an iron or just because you want to, or just completionist purposes or whatever, I would say Zamorak is not a good starting point unless you're very into group PVMing and you've taken some time to learn his mechanics a little bit better. Just on the surface level from what I've seen, it seems like even Telos is a little bit easier to learn than Zamorak. That might come down to your personal experience. Like I said, I'm horrible at both bosses at the moment, and by myself in normal mode I can't even get through one Zamorak kill. I'm just not at that stage of PVM yet. Most of you will know this already too, but remember that starting at 100% enrage at Zamorak, that difficult phase 7 starts, which, one reason I say that this is better if you're into group PVM is that phase 7 is very difficult for the vast majority of players to complete solo because you take a lot of damage very quickly, and I'm not even familiar with it yet, and a lot of teams I think still struggle with that one. So just another thing to consider. But if you can consistently find good teams and learn mechanics a little bit better, I think you can consistently get a lot of high enrage Zamorak kills, but even so.
Probably start with Araxxi. As much as as much as the other two bosses are harder for me, I hate Araxxi the most just because the mechanics are annoying to me. And there's just more chances for totally randomly occurring mechanics to screw you. So anyways, that's a personal thing, but yeah, that's the scoop. Enough said on that, I think. I hope this helped out a lot of you that are still watching. If you are still watching, thank you. I really appreciate it. And anyone who dropped off earlier, I guess, too. I hope it helps. I hope it gives a different perspective on drop rates and RNG than you get from just reading the drop rate of something or putting something into the Telos kill streak calculator on the wiki or whatever. It is a very different thing to say that the drop rate of something is 1 in 240 versus this is what it actually looks like when 10,000 players go for this thing. And these are more complicated calculators too, because each of these bows require multiple pieces, and you have to get into one drop table, at least in Telos and Zamorak. You have to get into the rare drop table, and then it's a separate roll, etc., etc. The RuneScape wiki, I will mention, actually does have a simple drop calculator, and it gives you data very similar to what I have here in the graph. But it's for, you can put in the drop rate for a single item and how many kills you want to go for, and it'll tell you that. So the wiki will absolutely not handle a simulator like this, which is also part of the reason why I made these. I am taking suggestions for other bosses, other simulations, things like that. I am considering doing, and I have heard from my past Reddit posts that some people might be interested in like a full drop log calculator for certain bosses, like Carapac or whatnot. Like I said, if you're looking in if you're interested in drop rates for a single rare item, you can find that on the RuneScape wiki. I'll link that in the description here for you. But if you're looking for something more complicated like this, let me know in the comments. I'll do my best to make a simulator. It's actually a lot of fun. I'm having a lot of fun making these, more than I thought I would, so totally up for it. If you enjoyed this, please consider liking this video and subscribing to my channel. It really helps me grow my audience a lot and bring you guys more useful content like this. So thank you very much for staying with me, and I'll catch you in the next one.